Monsignor Francis Burns had presided over many funerals in his 35 years as a Catholic priest. They were all sad, somber occasions, but this one was different. News reports estimated that 500 to 600 mourners had come to Christ the King Church to pay their respects, and, in their grief, many were looking to Monsignor Burns to make sense of it all. Why did Patrick Biller do it? Why did he have to take his family with him? This man had been known by some in the neighborhood for decades. How could he commit such a horrible act of pure evil? The priest stood before the 4 caskets, and the hundreds of friends, relatives, neighbors, teachers, and classmates who were still in shock, still in tears over what had happened at the Biller home just 5 days earlier. Monsignor Burns was an expert at explaining the loss of life with words that were eloquent and spiritually meaningful. This time, however, he simply said, "For me to stand here and explain this tragedy is impossible. I won't even try." My name is Michael, and this is the tragic story of the Biller family, and I do have to warn you that this story includes a self-exit, so please proceed with caution. The full newspaper article from my thumbnail is available at grimsilence.com, and if you're interested in true crime that tends to be older and more obscure, please be sure to like and subscribe. 1997 was the year that moviegoers were captivated by Titanic, Hong Kong returned to Chinese rule, and Princess Diana's life ended abruptly in a truly horrific car crash in Paris. And in December of the same year, the city of Yonkers, New York, experienced a terrible loss of its own. Located along the Hudson River just north of the Bronx in New York City, Yonkers is a thriving suburb, and, like most suburbs, it's generally a safe place to live. Not a lot happens in Yonkers, and that was especially true on Mary Lou Avenue, where the Biller family lived for nearly 25 years. Up until the early morning hours of December 5, 1997, when violence erupted in the Biller house, the Billers really were just an ordinary working-class family. 53-year-old Patrick Biller worked as a telephone repair technician for Bell Atlantic, a position he had held for 27 years. His wife, 49-year-old Maureen Biller, was a doting mother who was dedicated to raising the family's 3 children right and keeping them on top of their studies. Maureen also worked the school lunch shift every day at Christ the King Elementary School. And the Billers' 3 children were all very well liked in both their neighborhood and at their respective schools. 8-year-old Courtney was in the 3rd grade at Christ the King Elementary, where her mother worked. 14-year-old Erin was a freshman at Maria Regina High School. And 20-year-old Patrick Biller Jr. worked as a waiter while also attending Westchester Community College. All 3 of the Biller children were good kids, the kind who would make any parent proud. And although some were aware that tension had been rising in the Biller house, many believed that the family was doing just fine. Patrick Biller Sr. was not a man who was used to being cooped up in the house, but starting in May of 1997, that is exactly the situation that he found himself in. Heart problems forced Biller to leave his job and go on disability for several months, and after a short stint back at work, Biller was once again resting at home as he recovered from open-heart surgery. It is unknown exactly what was happening in the Biller house from day to day, but by December, it was clear that the situation at home had severely deteriorated. Patrick Biller Sr. had finally been medically cleared to return to work, but the Billers' marriage was already in shambles. Neighbors reported hearing Biller arguing with his wife on numerous occasions, as their loud arguments could be heard outside the house by anyone within earshot. At some point, Maureen Biller announced that she wanted a divorce, but she abandoned the idea when it became clear that her husband intended to turn the divorce into a legal battle. The mother was not about to drag her children through such an ordeal. Things got so bad that Tom Romano, a neighbor, said that there were mornings when he would see Patrick Biller Sr. sleeping in his car. Another neighbor, Gail Bechtel, added, "If you saw him sleeping in his car, you know they had a fight." Patrick and Maureen Biller were both described as friendly, but it was Patrick whom neighbors said had a short temper. Brian Abdallah, a co-worker of Patrick Sr.'s at Bell Atlantic, even went as far as to call Patrick Biller a violent, explosive man. Abdallah is quoted as saying, "I was scared of him. He was unpredictable, and he had some temper. He seemed like a nice guy, but when you see him explode like that, you learn to avoid him." Catherine Miaris was a friend of the family who was especially close with 14-year-old Erin Biller. Erin had once dated Miaris' son, George, and although the two had split up, Erin remained close with George and his family. Erin Biller had a mother who loved her, but there was turmoil at Erin's home, and the girl needed an adult she could lean on. Perhaps this is what led Catherine Miaris to think of herself as a surrogate mother to the young teenager. Erin told Catherine that she and her brother and sister were all worried. The kids were aware of the talk of divorce, and Erin had called Catherine to talk about the family. The girl said that things at home were getting crazy, that everyone was getting on each other's nerves, and that the family was glad that Dad would be going back to work soon. This conversation between Erin Biller and Catherine Miaris took place on December 4th, 1997, the day before Erin died. Early the next morning, neighbors were awakened by some very unexpected noise coming from the Biller house. Yonkers detective George Rutledge had been told that it sounded like firecrackers. Donna Shine's husband was leaving for work at about 5:30 a.m. He had heard a series of bangs, and to his ear, it sounded like someone was trying to fix a jammed window. Joseph Romanishin heard it too. Barely awake, he wondered why anyone would be hammering and doing construction work at such an hour. And then he went back to sleep. The downstairs portion of the Biller house had been converted into an apartment, and this was where Maureen Biller's mother, Blanche Mullins, lived. Maureen's parents had helped the Billers buy the house 25 years earlier. Blanche Mullins, widowed and living alone downstairs, was awakened that morning just as the neighbors had been. Mullins attempted to go upstairs to see what was causing the commotion. The door that separated her downstairs apartment from the Biller residence was usually left unlocked, but not this time. Mullins picked up the phone and frantically dialed her daughter's family upstairs. She called twice and got the answering machine both times. And then Blanche Mullins called the police. News reports don't quite agree exactly on when the police arrived, but it was around 5:50 a.m. Officers forced their way into the upstairs apartment where the Biller family lived, and even the most seasoned officers were in utter disbelief at what they encountered. In the living room was Maureen Biller's lifeless body. In the rear bedroom was Patrick Biller Jr.'s body, and the family's two daughters, Erin and Courtney, were also dead, still in their bunk beds. All had been shot in the head. Police couldn't be sure exactly how the murders had unfolded, but they theorized that Maureen Biller was the first victim. Patrick Biller Jr. may have witnessed his mother's murder and was killed as he ran to his bedroom. The father then ended the lives of his daughters before turning the gun on himself. A diagram of the house that was published in the Herald-Statesman on the day after the murders claimed that Patrick Biller Sr.'s body was found in the living room. 2 days later, the Terrytown Daily News reported that his body was found on the floor of his daughter's bedroom. The weapon used was a 6-shot, .38 caliber revolver. Police determined that 17 shots had been fired, indicating that Biller had reloaded his gun twice during this awful rampage. James Keene, a neighbor of the Billers, came home in the morning from his night shift job to find the usually very quiet Mary Lou Avenue lined with police cars. Inside the house, Monsignor Francis Burns gave the family last rites before the 5 body bags were carried outside to waiting vehicles. Maureen Biller was first. The last body bag was the smallest. It was 8-year-old Courtney. Police officers helped a distraught Blanche Mullins down the stairs of the house that she had helped to provide for her daughter's family. James Keene and other neighbors stood by and watched the scene at the Biller house in stunned silence. A woman who knew Patrick Biller Jr. asked Keene, "It's not true, is it?" But she already knew the answer. In the days that followed, a makeshift memorial sprung up in front of the home. Friends and well-wishers memorialized the family with flowers, letters, and poems. Martin Gallagher, a friend of Erin's, laid a bouquet down and then sat on the steps in front of the home and wept. Michael Giordano, a friend of Patrick Jr.'s from Westchester Community College, wiped away tears as he remembered his college classmate. And Patrick Jr.'s 1984 Chevrolet Caprice Classic was parked in front of the house. In the front seat, Patrick's girlfriend had left a bouquet of flowers and a note which read, "My dearest Patrick, I miss you. My soul cries for you. I love you today, tomorrow, and for the rest of my life. You have taken my heart with you. I'll see you in heaven, my angel. Loving you, Isabella." Investigators interviewed relatives as they searched for a motive. Patrick Biller Sr. had not left a note behind, and the community struggled to understand what had just happened. Neighbor Tom Romano surmised that Biller, with his health problems and crumbling marriage, was walking a fine line and just went over the edge. Suleiman Rabadi, whose daughter was a friend of Erin's, marveled at how a man could do such a thing to his own children. 14-year-old Amanda Notaro, another close friend of Erin Biller, summed up what many were probably feeling about Patrick Biller Sr. The girl said of the killer, "I don't care what his reasons were. I can never forgive him." In the days leading up to the joint funeral that would be held for Maureen, Patrick Jr., Erin, and Courtney, those close to the family shared memories of the 4 members of the Biller family. Very little information was published about Courtney, perhaps due to her young age, but the 8-year-old girl was described by the Terrytown Daily News as a beautiful child who cheerfully accompanied her mother to lunch duty at Christ the King Elementary before she was of school age. Erin was barely halfway through her freshman year at Maria Regina High School. Erin loved sports and was involved in both basketball and swimming. The principal at her high school, Sister Danielle Barron, said that Erin was, quote, "the type of young lady you'd get to know quickly," adding that the girl was outgoing, friendly, and full of life. Seniors at the high school wrote a touching poem about Erin and her bright smile and rosy cheeks. The poem was shared during a prayer service in the school gymnasium, and it ended with these words, "And since you're gone, we can only hope and pray that we will all meet with you in heaven someday." In addition to attending Westchester Community College, Patrick Biller Jr. waited tables at the Manor House, a local banquet hall. He was known to be a hard worker and someone they could always depend on. Robert Gomprecht, the former headmaster at Patrick's high school, Fordham Prep, described the young man as a nice kid who was well-liked. The Reverend Joseph Parks, president of the school, said he was well-regarded by his classmates and seemed to be destined for a bright future, as were Patrick's sisters. And Maureen Biller was remembered as a lovely woman who was always smiling and always pleasant. She was a fixture at Christ the King Elementary during lunchtime, and she also volunteered at a local nonprofit where she was remembered as a caring person who was very cordial and very sweet. Although Monsignor Burns was unable to explain what Patrick Biller Sr. had done, the funeral service for the mother and the 3 children did provide much-needed closure for the community. 14-year-old Maria Rios, one of Erin Biller's classmates at Maria Regina, found comfort in the funeral service. "It's made me feel a little bit better," she said. "Erin's going to be at peace and won't suffer anymore." And another mourner, Myra Black, acknowledged the finality of what had taken place, saying, "They are all gone, and we can just pray they're in heaven now." condolences to the friends and relatives of the Biller family. Please leave your thoughts in the comments below, and thank you for watching.